Hey everyone, the castle here, doing another one of my vlogs. So, there isn't really a whole lot to bring up at this point in time other than the fact that I'm getting pretty antsy and I actually want to get back to my Unreal 4 development stuff. I have Helios, I have a build for it, I have the access to everything to be able to actually begin doing stuff like that. But I do actually want to talk a little bit about my live stream stuff. I'm not really sure if I'm going to be able to live stream like I want to because mainly it's just not a good idea for me to interrupt Zombie Doll streams with my live streams. If we both stream at the same time, it can end up often being kind of awkward where I have to be like in push to talk or you know what I mean, or something like that. Like um, it's just not a it's not a good time to be trying to do that kind of a thing. And her stream is actually exploding right now. It's continually getting bigger and bigger, and she's getting very, very popular. Yeah, I guess I'm just gonna have to figure something out where maybe I don't know, maybe videos or maybe I just leave it running while she's streaming in the background or something like that. Like I don't know, I might try a couple of things this week just to see, but in all honesty, I really don't want to interrupt her situation because she's actually fairly successful at this point in time, and that's a very good thing that should not be interrupted. Um, I mean, that is really a good thing. So, I'm not really sure how I should handle it. Now, the game development stuff with me, I usually end up being pretty inconsistent because, well, I'm always fucking working. And if I'm working, I usually get distracted by my work. But I do want to actually have like videos or something like that. So what I might start doing is maybe, I don't know, maybe leave a replay buffer up every once in a while and just hit the replay buffer button whenever something interesting happens or something like that, and then just upload that shit blindly and onto YouTube. Well, not totally blindly, but like 12-minute or 10-minute long cuts of me working with people or doing things with avatars or whatever. But I really, really want at this point in time to begin actually getting game development stuff back online. Now, another thing that I also kind of want to kick myself about a little bit, and this would actually be a pretty fair criticism of the current, my current situation right now, is that I could have been working on my Doom map, and I have been taking time off, and I haven't worked on my Doom map at all. I probably could have had it done by the end of the week, but I've been having a lot of fun with VR chat avatars and worlds and stuff like that, which is kind of coincides with my desire to work on Helios as well. Um, I guess you can only pick so many things that you can actually do at once, but it would actually be really nice, I think, to have that Doom level done, like a vanilla version. Redemption is this lane, a vanilla version um, of that level, and then use it as a way to like promote my Patreon. Actually, I've kind of come to a kind of a conclusion about Patreon in general. The idea of Patreon is actually really good, and I guess I'm saying that's a pretty well duh moment, right? But the thing is, though, is that for the longest time, like there was always like a debate about whether or not it was okay to have people who make mods to make money and stuff like that, right? Patreon was always fine. It was actually a really good way to do it. Um, you just have like a monthly thing. Like I only allow like $2 a month or something like that at the moment. I'll probably add something that's a little bit more advanced, but like I kind of wish that I got involved with Patreon a lot sooner when I was making mods for games and stuff like that, or whatever. Because if people like the stuff that I was doing at the time, I would have some, I would have people like actually paying me on my Patreon, and then I could like put in a thing like if I'm making X amount, I can continue making mods for games and stuff like that. Making mods for games is pretty nifty stuff because you already have all that tedious work already done for you. You're really just making worlds. You're just making additions to existing games, which is a completely different ball game than trying to design everything from the ground up, where you actually have to do your own options menus. And God, I always talk about the options menu. Options menus are a fucking drag. They suck. Um, they're not fun to work on. But anyway, with that said, right now have begun a new avatar for myself. Yes, that is a bulge, but I am going to integrate that a little bit better so it's more seamless and a little bit more subtle. Um, I have a avatar here that is mine based on the same body base that Nylily designed. So it's sort of like taking off from the Justice Wolf thing, but it's more of a like a plug suit, kind of a transhumanist sort of plug suit kind of a thing. And this is good practice for me actually because I don't really get enough fun doing like character art. Of course, with Exalive, I'm going to have to be doing a lot of character art because there's going to be a lot of character art. There's going to be the necessity to make all of the different creatures and things of that nature. So this is just kind of me ramping up for that kind of stuff as well. Now the thing is though, is that uh, I really need to get back to Exalive. So Exalive and Helios. Now, my plans for Helios are going to be to focus on building a home world and building a hub world. And these are the sort of like the basic areas that you first enter into the game and everything like that. I'm probably going to take as much advantage of the Unreal 4 engine as possible because why not? It's going to be kind of interesting, but one of the I might explore like different avenues, like different ways to like change the settings so that you can lower the graphics, or maybe the hub world can look like a box map if you click a certain option or something like that, so that it just so it looks like so it minimizes like system requirements for you to be able to run it smoothly. A lot of the things that I actually want to explore with Helios would probably be stuff like that. Like I might want to make it so that people can um, maximize like the volume of somebody that they're staring directly at. Like somebody who's right in front of you, there should be like an importance trace that gets sent out. So whenever you're looking at somebody, um, you if you look at somebody in their eyes, or if you look at somebody in their face, like they'll um, their voice will be louder than people around you and stuff like that. Um, things like that. I don't know. I mean, that's one of the things that's being worked on right now, but getting voice and everything like that set up. We'll have to see how everything goes. I'm really interested in the project. It's going to be really quite good, and this body base is absolutely amazing. Night Lily is kind of a genius. Um, so with that said, all right. It's just going to be a little bit longer of me having fun, kind of just dilly dallying around. I apologize in advance. I did get a new patch out for Revulsion that fixed like a very minor thing on request, but like otherwise, I haven't really been too productive in the stuff that I should be actually super productive in, and I've just been kind of having fun. I think it's kind of necessary every once in a while, though, and it's not like this stuff isn't going to be. Sorry for hitting the microphone. It's not like this kind of stuff isn't going to be these aren't useful skills for me to have for the things that I want to do anyway. Like I'm going to have to do like avatar work to produce the kinds of avatars that Helios is going to need. The only thing is though is that being in the Unreal 4 engine and using the Paragon characters, the bar is a lot higher. As in terms of graphic fidelity, we can't just throw some MMD characters into the fucking Helios engine and make it look just as good as everything else because we're using the Epic stuff, and that's like full blown, like outright the highest quality like character design stuff that you can get. Like that's AAA studio um character meshes for for a fucking like VR game. So that'll be kind of an interesting experience to mess around with, I think. Uh I don't know. Maybe it's not a good idea, but I think it's a good idea because at least it'll get things rolling on that front, and then we'll be able to actually see what those higher quality characters, like how the community actually responds to higher quality characters like that. You know what I mean? Because like, man, imagine if like if we could just use like a lot of those like photorealistic scenes for like having like a really cool apartment and have that be your home world, and you can choose where to place the couch. You know what I mean? You get like this like really cool place of your own that's kind of like semi-futuristic and everything like that, and and it just looks really realistic. And then you have like more realistic characters and stuff. I mean, ultimately speaking, it's still going to be very stylized, but I'm just thinking like, wow, like, and also too, we have ray tracing. RTX, the ray tracing thing. I don't know if that's going to be possible in VR anytime really soon, but good God, what it does to the scene! It's like photorealism is so close, and this actually brings up an interesting topic regarding photorealism. What happens when we start actually cresting on the photorealistic thing? Because I mean, once you start getting the lighting with ray tracing for the rendering engine, what's going to end up actually happening there with like creation or the need to recreate assets? Because once something looks photorealistic up close, it doesn't really ever need to be recreated, does it? Like at that point in time, like it's just conjecture whether or not you want to actually have an artist, pay an artist to actually recreate that thing. So like take for example a certain type of gun or a a type of like a desert eagle or something, right? Once you make a desert eagle, do you really ever, and it's photorealistic, do you ever really need another desert eagle? I mean, if it's like a public source, like free fucking photorealistic Desert Eagle, and somebody just uses their Patreon, to continually release photorealistic things, you can kind of automate the game industry a little bit. You can kind of hit AAA studios in the wallet because they're going to be in a situation where it's like, well, why are we paying all these artists? And then you force them into having smaller and smaller studios. Why would that be advantageous to us? Well, one of the problems, or at least one of the main things right now with AAA studios, is that we haven't been training people to appreciate the artists behind all of the things that they're creating. We know that the artists are important for projects because they're the ones, not just the artists. I'm talking about in general, like the creators, the developers, right? If you take a look at any kind of game where like you have a really really rock solid team that's able to do whatever they want, you end up with a really really good game, like very often, and but you have to have that talent from the top all the way to the bottom, right? You can actually prejudge whether or not a game is going to be good just by determining like who's working on the project. Like we should be paying more attention to who the developers are that are hired at the company, and if they have a bunch of interns or if they're outsourcing most of their art assets or something like that, you can guarantee that that's going to have a negative impact. So like whenever like a big AAA studio is doing some crazy thing where they're like outsourcing most of their art to some company out in India or China or something like that, and they're getting a bunch of crappy assets, like you can actually look at the assets and you can tell. You can be like, okay, yeah, that explains this, right? A lot of the things, a lot of the greed that's being driven in the AAA industry can be squelched by simply having a greater degree of importance on making sure that people who are really good at what they do are the ones that are on the team, if that makes any sense. I should probably go into more detail about this, and I ended up getting sidetracked from the whole idea of having like the photorealistic weapons and photorealistic assets. Once you start having smaller and smaller teams, the reason why I brought that up, because you start to automate the process and you start going down the route of having photorealistic graphics, then you can actually focus a little bit more on those people because there's fewer of them. You don't need a huge team anymore because once someone makes an M1 Abrams tank, right, and it's photorealistic, you don't really need to hire, an artist to make a new one. You just need that one photorealistic, and maybe somebody to grab it and like add some dirt to it or something like that, for your game or whatever, right? Like there's a certain point at this point in time where we can actually start seeing teams get smaller rather than larger because big teams end up turning into churning employees like they're not even really human beings. What we want, an ideal scenario, is what we want is to have smaller and smaller teams so that corporations have a harder and harder time treating their employees like shit, so that we can end up with an overall better quality experience with all of the products that we are buying, playing. The indie game market is, a pretty good example of this, but we definitely need to see, not just having people doing like, solo projects like I do all the time, but actually having sort of like rockstar teams working on small projects where they have full oversight over everything, and then they have good leadership as well, because we know who all the good leaders really are. Anyway, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna end this video now. With that said, hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for more. There'll be more information. I'll see you guys in the next one.